Well, the Russian communist leader Lenin once warned his comrades that trust is good, but control is better. It's not only communist thinkers that argue along these lines. For instance, Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the American Constitution, once said that distrust and caution are the parents of security. And in more recent times, Matt LeBlanc, the American actor that might be more known to you as the character of Joey Tribbiani in the TV series Friends, said, "The more cynical you become, the better off you are." Now, do you think that these three thinkers are right, that you should not trust other people, that most others are basically selfish and untrustworthy? I want to convince you that these people are wrong. Because I'm going to argue that it pays off, I'm going to argue that most people can be trusted. In the last 10 years, me and my colleagues, Dave Dunning and Thomas Schlesser, have run dozens of studies using the so-called trust game. Now, the trust game is a game theoretical paradigm where two persons interact with each other under conditions of total anonymity. That is, they do not know each other before, and they don't get to know each other neither during nor after the experiment. Now, suppose you are person A, and you are given an amount of money, let's say €5. Then you have two alternatives what to do with this money. You can either keep the €5 for sure, or you can send them to person B. If you do this, the experimenter adds another €15 to this amount, so person B has then a total of €20. And with this €20, then he has two alternatives what to do. Person B can either keep all the money for themselves, which would mean that you go home without nothing, or they can split the money evenly between you and themselves. Now, although this situation might seem artificial at the beginning, at first glance, if you think about it, it really captures the essence of trust. As person A, if you hand over your money to person B, you make yourself vulnerable and dependent on the goodwill of person B. If person B turns out to be trustworthy, you've made €10 out of your 5. But if person B turns out not to be trustworthy, you are just left with nothing. So the question is, what should you do as person A in such a trust game? Should you hand over the money, or should you rather keep it for yourself? Obviously, that very much depends on the question what persons B are going to do in this situation. Now, we've run, as I said, dozens of studies with this paradigm with a huge variation of participants. They came from Europe, they came from the US, they were students, they were top managers, they were small children, they were older people, and the results always looked very similar. Basically, it turns out that people are quite skeptical about what person B is going to do in such a paradigm. On average, people tell us, well, you know, I guess that half of persons B will act trustworthy, that is, they would split the money evenly, but the other half will basically keep all the money for themselves and run away with it. Interestingly, the actual behavior is very different. What you find usually is that a vast majority of persons B turns out to be trustworthy. And that is that if you hand over your money to them, on average, you will earn more money by doing this than by keeping your money for safe. So you should trust person B in a trust game if you want to maximize your monetary outcome. But trust does not only pay off in this laboratory game, but also in everyday life. So, for instance, trustful individuals earn more income, even if you control for all other variables that do have an influence on income, like, for instance, age, gender, level of experience, educational level, or whatever. Secondly, companies that do cultivate a culture of trustfulness fare better than companies that are distrustful towards, for instance, their employees or their customers. Just to give you a vivid example of that, a colleague of mine once sold and bought a digital camera on eBay. Now, if you are doing such a thing on eBay or Marktplatz, usually the regime is that you sell the camera or the object, then the buyer has to send you the money, and only then you send them the product. Now, this colleague of mine did something different. He told the potential buyers, well, you know what, I first sent you the camera. Make sure that you have it in your hands, that everything is in order, and only if you're satisfied with it, only then you send me the money. And he did this 100 times in a row. Once, his trust was betrayed. That is, he sent the camera but didn't get any money at all. In the 99 other times, however, he got about 10% more for the camera than he had been paying himself the day before he resold the camera the next day. So on average, obviously, it was a very good way of earning money by just being trustful towards your potential buyers. And the same holds true for societies at large. You can distinguish countries and societies and cultures by the level of trust they have. In some countries, people basically trust each other and think that most others are nice and altruistic. And in other cultures, people are sure that you should never trust your fellow countrymen. And what can show that in trustful societies, economic growth rates are much bigger than in distrustful societies, even if you control for all the other variables that obviously play a role in this regard. Distrust harms your relationships. Just think about it. Do you like the idea of your partner checking which emails or which SMSs you are getting on your smartphone? Do you like the idea of your employer controlling your workplace behavior by the usage of hidden cameras? Do you like the fact that the NSA is reading all our emails? I guess none of us likes that. And so what's happening is that distrust is sending a signal about the relationship you have with that other person, and this is a rather negative signal. But distrust is also sending a signal about yourself, and it turns out that people don't like that signal. People prefer trustful others against untrustful others. Trustful people are perceived to be warm and competent, and distrustful people are perceived to be rather cold and damp. And Lao Tzu already said this 2,500 years ago when he said, if you don't trust, you will not be trusted. What's more, trust leads to health and happiness. It turns out that trustful people have a higher level of life satisfaction and also a better level of general health. Why should this be the case? Now, if you think about it, if you live in a world where you think that basically life is a war of all against all, and if you think that you are surrounded by enemies, this is not a nice place to live in, and this won't make you happy. But if you trust other people, if you think that generally speaking most others are good, this is a much better place to be. And if you feel endangered and threatened all the time, this will put pressure on your immune system. And this pressure then will lead to all different kinds of illnesses. There are even some hints now that trustful people have a higher life expectancy than those that do not trust other people. Now, if this is all true, then why don't we trust each other more? So why is it, for instance, in the trust game that we are so overly skeptical about persons' behavior? Well, I'd argue there are basically two main reasons for that. The first is that humans overestimate the amount of positive attributes that they have, and they underestimate the amount of negative attributes that they have. Most people, and I guess this is true for this audience as well, most people think they are better car drivers than the ordinary car driver. We all think we are more attractive than the ordinary guy. We all think that we are more intelligent than the ordinary guy, and so on and so on. And this is also true in terms of morality. We think that we are more moral than other people are. So for instance, when being person B in such a trust game, we think, oh well, I mean, it would just be nasty to keep all that money. I just feel obliged to send half of the money back. But what we forget then is that most other persons B will experience exactly the same feelings, and for that reason they will also send the money back. So we underestimate others' trustworthiness. This might be good for our moral self-esteem, but it actually does us bad because we underestimate the degree to which we can trust other people. There's another reason why we are not more trustful in everyday life, and that is the following. When we distrust another person, this person can never prove us that we have been wrong in the first place. Ernest Hemingway once said the best way to find out if you can trust another person is to trust them. And I would actually qualify this quote by saying the only way to find out if you can trust another person is to trust them. Now, this isn't easy all the time. And sometimes we do have problems with being trustful. Let's finish this talk with a rather personal story of mine. I have been married before. I'm now married, but I have been married before. And not only once, but twice. And if you marry, you are full of trust that this marriage will last forever and it's going to be the most beautiful relationship out there. And then when the marriage breaks, a divorce comes up, and divorces hurt. They are always hurtful. They are always very bad events in your life. So when I was thinking about marrying a third time, I did have some trust issues, and I still have them. But I'm very glad that I found it in my heart to still marry my third wife, because this is the only way that I can give her the chance to prove to me that it's just wonderful to be together with her each and every day. So to summarize, you should be trustful. It will pay off most of the times. It will improve your relationship. People will like you more, and it will do you good. Thank you.